What happened in day 2 of F1 testing? Welcome, Tom Bellingham, to the podcast, as always. Resident Max Verstappen fanboy with the Max cape in the background. Probably feeling quite good after today's running.
Yeah, he's looking a little bit ominous. I know it's only testing. Beaming smile on his face after day 1. Fastest on day 1 and second fastest again, but on a slower tyre. And yeah, the Red Bull's looking rather quick and just kind of just out there doing Max Verstappen things. It almost feels like it's where we left off last year. But it's only testing.
And he was not the fastest driver of the day. The fastest time was set by Zhou Guan Yu, P1, by a massive 0.04 of a second ahead of Max Verstappen. Yes, Zhou was on the C5s, Verstappen on the C3s. That is pretty ominous. When you look back, the next C3 runner was Fernando Alonso in third, a whole 0.6 back in the Aston Martin. But once again, I would say the Aston's looking pretty saucy.
Zhou Guan Yu's lap was maybe a bit of a glory run at the end. We saw a lot of kind of high fuel, not really much lap time action, I guess, today, if you like. But Zhou Guan Yu maybe just wanted to go P1.
Most of the things that happened were things that weren't really to do with the performance or the actual laps. Like, for example, the practice start that went on was a bit of a strange moment. So there was, 6-7 cars ready to have the practice start at the end of the morning session. So in that last 15-minute period, they run through all the processes. And then at the end of that, they then have the practice. Well, they have the abandoned start, then they have the practice start, don't they? And for whatever reason, some of the drivers reacted on the lights going out. But then you had others like Lando Norris just literally didn't move. So thankfully, they have cat-like reactions because they're Formula One drivers. But it was quite a funny thing to watch. And then on top of that, you had Anthony Davidson doing the strangest impression of Crofty you'll ever hear. It is mind-boggling.
You can imagine it being played out of context with like Formula One, the 20 best drivers in the world, and then showing that clip where they're all kind of tripping over each other with the start.
And Anthony Davidson, he's on the grid and he's on...
Yeah, very bizarre.
But back to some actual things that happened on track, one of which was George Russell breaking down with a hydraulic issue. We don't tend to see a huge amount of unreliability from Mercedes. I think they only had one breakdown last year. In terms of actual mechanical reliability, Mercedes always seem very bulletproof, but a small hitch in that plan for Russell today.
Yeah, very rare to see that from Mercedes. A lot of people did a lot of laps, but I think Russell only did 26. Yeah, so that's the lowest lap count by quite a long way. And we mentioned actually on stream, we haven't seen anywhere near the amount of red flags like you normally do, because Barcelona, where they used to test and they did the private test last year, one, the cars are more reliable because of the carryover in rules, and two, if you go off track in Bahrain, it's just flat runoff and you're fine.
I was also actually going to say about Russell, I do enjoy not him breaking down, but the like panic of the marshals trying to balance the car as it goes onto the recovery vehicle. Like, yeah. If I was in charge of that, the car would be upside down, everyone would see everything, and it would be a disaster.
Because I guess there's still time for early in the season for teams to see other cars. And they've probably got spy photographers everywhere all dotted around the track. So when a car breaks down, it's probably when panic sets in for the teams. One, because their car's broken down, and two, because the other teams can start snapping photos of it and the floor and everything. And we know with these new cars that the floor is the most important bit of it, really. That's where all the downforce is and the clever stuff.
One thing that came out, which is very interesting, McLaren saying they're not hitting their targets. Zak Brown just basically straight up giving everybody the indication that McLaren ain't doing so good.
We were worried about that yesterday before Norris popped in P5, but again, the actual quote is, we know we set some goals for development, which we didn't hit. We felt it was better to be honest about that. They seem very pessimistic. The drivers seem pessimistic. The team feel pessimistic, and they're kind of already talking about upgrades and getting them in as soon as possible. It's a big yikes.
The reality is that right now they've kind of set into a trend of fighting for P4 in the championship. Like, that just seems to be where McLaren have settled themselves into. They never talk about, it's time to start winning races. This year's going to be the year.
Yeah, you're right. The fact that McLaren, they're saying they're not hitting their targets, and you've got to think their target is probably around fourth. They're not going to, there's no way that they're going to this year think they're going to be right at the front with not much of a rule change. So not looking good for McLaren. Could see another struggle.
Okay, moving on now, Tommy. You've got a bit of news that I don't actually know much about, and it's to do with Haas and their pit wall.
A kind of unusual thing that we've not seen before, but Haas have introduced a mini pit wall. Quite comical because obviously the teams normally have 8 people on the pit wall, on the pit wall, like a fancy looking pit wall with loads of computers and stuff. And Haas only have 3 chairs on theirs. And the reason they've done that is because their thinking is, what would you rather have, because of the budget cap, of course. And they're saying that not putting an extra 6-7 people on the pit wall or whatever, they actually will save $250,000, I think they said, which they'd rather spend on car upgrades.
I guess a few other things to highlight. De Vries did a really good lap and finished P4 today on the C4 tyres, did 74 laps, so he can be quite happy with himself in the AlphaTauri. I think Logan Sargent, got to give him a shout out in P7. Yes, was on the C5 tyres, and when you compare that to Alfa Romeo's Zhou, you've got 9 tenths between them. So we don't know yet how good that Williams is, but then again, that was done maybe a little bit earlier in the day when the sun was shining. But still, P7 ahead of Leclerc. Not sure what we can make of that, if anything. Definitely nothing, because it's testing. Both Mercedes were 13th and 15th as well, so a very underwhelming day for them, especially after Russell's problems as well. I think that pretty much wraps up day 2. And also, before we go, we should probably mention that weird kind of Williams thing that was going on with Sargent, that it seemed as though it was a rehearsal for the whole procedure of if you have an ERS failure, apparently, according to Crofty. Zhou as well, right at the end of the day as well, having a problem potentially with his clutch. Just when he shifted into first gear, it sounded like a baby squeaking, maybe.
I'm not technical, but squeaking baby.
So yes, come and join us, Matt P1 Tommy, live on Twitch for a watch along of the final 2 hours of testing tomorrow. So we'll see you then. Bye!